All right, so welcome to the deep dive, where we like to pick a really interesting document and just kind of dig into it. And today we have the FOMC statement from the Federal Reserve,
Yeah.
which is always interesting reading. And I always feel like I learn a lot, reading between the lines a little bit and trying to understand what's going on in the economy.
Yeah. I mean, this is the Fed talking, so everyone's going to be listening very carefully to what they have to say, and they don't always, come right out and say it.
Right.
So yeah, there's a little bit of reading between the lines, but we're going to unpack all of it.
Yeah, and we'll kind of hit all the main points that they made in the statement and sort of explain what they mean by that.
Yeah, and what it means for you, for your investments in your life.
Exactly.
Got it.
So let's jump in.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing they talk about is kind of what they're seeing in the economy,
Yeah.
and they always lead with the good stuff. All right. So they're talking about the fact that economic activity is expanding at a solid pace.
At a solid pace. Yeah, they're saying the unemployment rate remains low and stable labor market conditions are solid.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like the economy is, it's humming along pretty well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jobs out there. There's people seem to be doing okay, but obviously we know that inflation has been an issue.
Of course.
And that is still kind of, top of mind for everybody. And they even say in here that, inflation remains somewhat elevated.
Right.
And I think this, the somewhat is doing a lot of work there because it's elevated quite a bit.
A little bit. Yeah, yeah.
So that's, that's obviously something they're very focused on. And they also mentioned that that uncertainty around the economic outlook has increased.
Right.
So they're seeing some potential bumps in the road ahead, and so they're trying to be very careful.
I mean, imagine the Fed's kind of like, piloting a plane through some turbulence.
Yep.
They got to be very careful. They've got to be watching all the gauges, making sure that everything is, under control. And this statement kind of reflects that there is that sense of uncertainty.
Yeah, and all of this is, of course, viewed through the lens of their dual mandate.
Right.
They're supposed to, look out for maximum employment and price stability.
Yeah.
So they're trying to balance those two things, and that's not always easy.
It's not.
Let's talk about interest rates.
Yeah.
That's the big thing that everybody's always focused on. And they did decide to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate
Yeah.
at 4.25% to 4.5%. So
No increase?
no increase
Right.
for now.
Right.
Right. They're holding steady. But
Right, Pete.
but they do say that future adjustments will depend on incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks.
Yeah, so this is not necessarily the end of the rate hikes. It's just
Right.
a pause.
They're taking a breather.
Yeah.
And seeing what happens next.
Yeah, and it's really important for you to understand that because a lot of people might be thinking, oh, well, the Fed's done raising rates.
Right.
But that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
They're just taking a wait-and-see approach.
Yeah. Okay. So they're holding rates steady for now, but they've also been reducing their holdings of government bonds and mortgage-backed securities.
Right.
That's quantitative tightening.
Yeah.
Any updates there?
Yeah, so they will continue to do that, but there is a big change with the Treasury securities.
Okay.
Starting in April, the monthly limit on how much they allow to mature without reinvesting will decrease from $25 billion to just $5 billion.
Wow, that's a big slowdown.
It is.
Especially for those Treasury securities, the agency debt and mortgage-backed securities that's staying at $35 billion.
Right.
But what do you make of it? What does that tell us?
Well, I mean, one thing it could tell you is that the Fed is getting a little bit more sensitive to the potential strains in the Treasury market
Okay.
after, a period of really rapid tightening.
Yeah.
They've been raising rates and they've been reducing their holdings,
Yeah.
and that's put a lot of pressure on the markets.
Right.
And so this could be a sign that they're starting to, get a little bit more worried about that.
Okay.
It could also reflect kind of a subtle rebalancing of their priorities.
Okay.
Maybe they're giving a little bit more weight to managing financial stability alongside their inflation fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough balancing act
It is.
because, if they tighten too much, then, you could have a recession.
Right.
But if they don't tighten enough, then inflation could get out of control.
Exactly.
So they're really trying to walk this tightrope.
Yeah. And the fact that they're slowing down the pace of quantitative tightening
Mm,
could be a sign that they're trying to be extra careful at
right.
this point.
Yeah. Well, and they do say in the statement, we've talked about this a little bit, but they reiterate their commitment to both maximum employment and returning inflation to that 2% goal.
Right.
So they're not letting go of that.
No, they're not.
They're still focused on bringing inflation down.
Absolutely.
But they're also trying to be, mindful of the potential risks to the economy.
Yeah, and they're going to be watching a lot of data.
Yeah,
They're going to be looking at employment figures, inflation readings,
right.
developments in the financial markets, the
Yeah.
global economic situation,
Yeah, all of that stuff.
all of that stuff.
And they're prepared to adjust their course if new risks emerge.
Absolutely.
So they're not on autopilot.
No.
They're ready to make changes if they need to. And one more thing I wanted to point out is that there was one dissenting vote.
Yeah.
Christopher J. Waller voted against the action.
Right.
And his reasoning was that he preferred to maintain the faster pace of decline in the Fed's securities holdings.
Right. So he agreed with keeping the interest rate range unchanged,
Okay.
but he wanted to keep going faster.
Faster.
The quantitative tightening.
With the quantitative tightenings.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because it shows that there is some disagreement within the committee.
Absolutely. There are different viewpoints.
Right, about how to proceed.
Exactly.
And that's important to remember that, the Fed is not a monolithic entity.
Right.
There are different people with different views.
Uh-huh.
And they don't always agree.
Right.
So to wrap things up for you.
Yeah.
The Fed is keeping interest rates where they are for now, but they are reducing the speed at which they're reducing their Treasury holdings. They're still focused on bringing down inflation while trying to keep the job market healthy.
Mm.
And they're navigating an increasingly uncertain economic environment.
That's a great summary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really highlights the key tensions that the Fed is grappling with right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough job.
It is.
And they're doing the best they can.
Yep.
So here's a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
We talked about the fact that the Fed is acknowledging this greater economic uncertainty,
Yeah.
but they're still very committed to their dual mandate.
Right.
So what does that mean for you? What specific economic indicators will you be paying closest attention to
Yeah.
in the coming weeks and months to see how this all plays out?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to be watching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.